Hi, welcome to my live. This is the case study of the boy in front of the screen. When I decided to use this particular case study, I knew it very well, and I'll explain the bits and pieces. But ultimately, from this piece of information, I want you to think about how sometimes there's multiple things that impact how a person ends up with an addiction or develops deceptive, secret sexual kinds of activities. So, for this particular case, I want you to just envision a small boy, maybe 5 years old, who has been going with his father occasionally to different homes and sitting in front of a TV, being given all his favorite foods and toys, and just allowed to watch as much TV as he wanted. And this would have been maybe the 70s. So here's this child, and this is what he's being conditioned for. And dad and the secretary would be off in the back room, behind closed doors. You know what was happening, right? And this had happened with various other females, not just this particular um, situation. So when this young boy went one day to his mom and said, I really want this particular toy, the mom said, I'm sorry, honey, you can't have this toy. We don't have the money for that. And he started crying and saying, no, I want the toy that's at the secretary's house. Well, when the mom heard that, she was like, "What do you mean the secretary's house?" So he said he named the toy and he said, he described what was going on, and she asked more questions about why he was at the secretary's house and where dad was and stuff like that. So it was then that was the beginning of like a series of messages to this young child as far as how things get managed in his head and in his interactions with other people. His mother became very upset and angry, and that had its own set of issues tied to it, which again then provided another dynamic that was going on between him and his mother, and then between he and I. So yeah, that's right. This is a story about my husband. Okay, so I'm gonna just go back into the story. I'm gonna actually read this because I wrote it all out. But the boy in front of the TV, he's 5 years old, sitting in front of the television, surrounded by his favorite snacks and a new toy, just enough to keep him quiet. Behind a closed door, his father disappears with the secretary. That's the day he was unknowingly placed in a story far too big for a child to carry. Later, his mother finds out through her son's innocent request for the toy that's at the secretary's house. Her world shatters. Her pain becomes hypervigilance. Her fear becomes overprotection. She becomes fiercely bonded to her son, over involved and emotionally fused in what we call enmeshment. The boy learns that love means anxiety, means control, and emotional responsibility. There's no space for his needs or autonomy. He becomes the caretaker, the emotional regulator, the one who must never disappoint or abandon. This part is just really sad to think that there's this message that gets put into a child, and this is how he gets to, this is how it impacts the rest of his life. So when love becomes a survival strategy. In Dr. Omar Minwala's framework, that's one of the people I've studied under and gotten a certification in deceptive sexual trauma. Um, it often begins with a broken attachment pattern and deep loneliness. Dr. Minwala describes a variety of things that feed into the sexual acting out or the inappropriate, deceptive, secretive types of behavior. One of them is complex childhood trauma, the other is attachment. And that's the baseline. You study all of that and try to figure out what things are part of the story for the individual. So, for this particular individual, this situation where, the family kind of fell apart, that was one of those pivotal moments in that young boy's mind that taught him a lot of lessons about how he needed to move forward in his life. This kind of enmeshed relationship wires the brain for coercive caretaking and covert defiance. This is a push-pull between dependency and hidden rebellion. So for this situation, being forced to take care of the emotional needs of a mom who was devastated by the, situation between her and her husband, she's being traumatized, and her son is the one that actually has to step up to the plate and co-regulate with her, like, be able to balance each other's moods out. And then, the opposite of that for a child or a teen or a young adult, the opposite of that is that you wanna go in and try to, be defiant, but you do it in secretive ways. And for some people, secretive ways might be the choices that you make that your mom can't control, like going out with friends and drinking, or using pornography, or dating certain types of women. Just going out of your way to do the things that would be upsetting, but as long as you kept the secret, it was okay. It was your own little act of defiance. To survive the emotional intensity at home, the boy learns to suppress, hide, and perform. As an adult, the same learned responses express themselves through sexualized secrecy. This could be a person that decides they're going to go to massage parlors, escorts, use a lot of porn, go to dating apps, set up dates, have emotional affairs. Basically, it's a person that's trying to figure out, like, how do they move through life and get their needs met sexually on some level, emotionally on another level, but then, on the other side, still be able to show up as the good boy. Anyway, this sexual acting out, it's not about sex. It's actually about relief. And each act becomes a private attempt to reclaim control, autonomy, and validation. So if you can't control anything in your own home, you can go to somebody else and control what you need. Maybe that's paying them money for ac- actions, or maybe that's, drinking when nobody else is around. Just being able to do these things to show that you can make decisions for yourself. You remember being 18, 19, and 20, and just wanting, well, let's go further back than that. 14, 15, wanting to go to parties, breaking curfews, doing things, sneaking out. All of those kinds of things happen, as a young kid. But this becomes more important for the type of situation where a child has been shut down and can't stretch the boundaries. So, why controlling doesn't heal? Many men try to control their behaviors with logic, accountability software, or punishment. So, these are the ones that say, "I can take care of this problem. Just leave it to me. I'm not gonna do anything else. I'm just gonna white knuckle it." If y'all have ever heard of that, it's like you're gonna just suffer through it until you believe that you're not gonna have that problem anymore, but it's still there. Um, but if the root is emotional, if there was shame, isolation, fear of engulfment, control isn't going to be the answer. Healing requires learning to be seen without performing, to connect without rescuing or hiding, to love without fear of being consumed or abandoned. These were all things that I can remember seeing my husband struggle with. What healing actually looks like for somebody that's in this kind of childhood pattern, it's understanding the story, tracing behaviors back to unmet attachment needs. So had my had my husband and I been able to go to therapy, one of the things that he would have had to learn is how important it was to have close relationships, but not too close, because they carry risk. The relationship with his mom carried a risk. He was overly responsible for her and had very minimal room for himself. Grieving the losses, so allowing sadness for the boy who learned that love had to be hidden. Building relational safety with partners, groups, or a trauma-informed therapist. So the other answer for healing here is that you start learning to have connections. This is why I always encourage a lot of my clients to go and use the 12-step program. Go to Sex Addiction Anonymous or Sex and Porn Addiction Anonymous. The goal here is to have some structure and framework to help you with the addictive piece, but the most significant part is being in community with other people that are struggling like you. Integrating new regulation, learning to self-soothe without secrecy or control. This is one of those big areas. I can never stress this enough. Being able to self-regulate is like the key here. When you're stressed, when you're experiencing halt BS, that's an acronym for my nervous system is stretched really tightly, and this could be the point where I actually act out. So halt BS stands for hungry, H, angry, A, lonely, L, tired, T, right? Halt. So hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And then B and S are bored and stressed. Those two factors, those six letters represent things that mean that the nervous system's on edge. And if a person's not paying attention, they might go back to the old way of taking care of these kinds of stressful events by acting out. So, doing things like martial arts, deep breathing, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, um, you know, golf, anything that helps you turn your brain off so that you're not constantly thinking. When you're stressed, the problem with that is that your brain does not shut off. It's constantly going over and over the situation, or your body is reacting with constant anxiety, and you need to be able to do something about that. Claiming adulthood, so creating autonomy that isn't rebellion, but truth. So being able to say no to a parent that's demanding things, being able to say no because you have other things or other people that you need to have connection with in addition to a parent. So I just want to say that every man who comes into my groups believes that his problem started with sex, but every time when we look deeper, we find a story like this one. There's loneliness, there was betrayal, emotional chaos, unspoken pain. Let's just think about it. If there was like this shit show that was happening, in terms of like emotionally caring for someone else, would you really wanna do that as you became older? Like, would you really wanna allow yourself to be even more connected closely to someone, or would you have learned that overly connecting with people might be the answer? Um, so it's finding these small pieces. So this is one small piece. You could also look at things like attachment. You could also look at things like other, childhood traumas that came along the way. Maybe he was bullied, maybe he had a coach that was too hard on him. Maybe he struggled to be a certain type of student and he didn't have that ability. So these are some of the things that could have been going on in childhood. The next level up is understanding how was I shaped as far as gender identity? Like how did I learn that a male needed to be, and how did a male need to be in relation to female or to a partner? And then the next level up from there is sexuality. What did you learn and observe around you regarding sexuality? What did my husband learn? He learned that you go and do these things, and people that are quiet and sit in front of the TV and eat get a lot of rewards. If you really looked at what was going on with my husband, he had multiple addictions. He loved to spend money and buy things. Within reason. He also liked to watch the cooking channels. He did a lot of cooking. He's a very good cook. And lucky me, he would do all the cooking. I didn't have to do anything, but that was part of his one or two areas where he had control, in addition to his sexual acting out, the use of porn. porn might have been, in control at one point, but, um, it just kept getting, more and more out of control, with the choices that he was making as far as, when and where he could, watch this kind of stuff. So, um, he had to we had to have a separation in order for him to be able to, work on this issue, and it was out of this that I went to get my first trainings in sex addiction. I, pushed myself through and got a certification in sex addiction. I also got a certification in sex therapy. So, if you have a problem or your partner has a problem, do not feel you need to go and get all these certifications because I did it. And use my brain, come and see me or go and find a CSAT in your area. I've talked before about using someone on itaap.com. That one has a list of therapists who are certified in sex addiction, a list of therapists who are certified in partner betrayal, and also in gaming in addiction, other addictions, and then especially also couple work. So, um, you know, go on there, search for a therapist in your area, or go look for a coach in nationwide or something like that. So, anyway, hopefully, those pieces of information will help you. If you would like me to help you, if you would like to just be able to have a discussion about what's going on with you, by all means, try to schedule a consultation, and I will try to work you into my schedule. It's down in the description. Scheduling a consultation. Mostly, the consultation is to see if you are maybe a candidate to come into my coaching group, because that again community is where you learn to rely on other people and learn to be vulnerable, and also learn to see how other people are progressing and what areas you are progressing in that might support others. So um, thank you for joining me on this live, and I will probably clean this story up and present it again. I know it was kind of all over, but thank you for joining me. And actually, also subscribe. That way, you know when I do my next lives, or at least get notified that I've posted more things. Have a good night. Bye.